We've reached Roman Waschuk, former Canadian ambassador to Ukraine. He now serves as business ombudsman of Ukraine. Hi, Mr. Waschuk. Good to have you back on the program.
Great to be with you, Vashi.
I wanted to start off by asking you for your reaction to this story about a senior global affairs official, a senior diplomat in this country, attending the Russia Day party. The government has said it shouldn't have happened and apologized for it. What do you think?
I think it's the kind of highly amenable go along to get alongside of the diplomatic personality getting the better of people's judgment. I know that in years past, we would get messages telling us, do not attend, do not send anyone to Iran's reception or something along those lines. So there should have been clearer guidance. And I guess someone decided, well, we still need to get along with them one way or another, which is on the one hand true. On the other hand, for a government that is saying we are isolating Russia, it's just plain the wrong thing to do.
Yeah, I guess I wonder, do you find it curious? Like I've just given all the public remarks from the government, and especially the foreign affairs minister, it does not seem congruent with the posture that they've taken, which is isolate Russia, make sure there's maximum pain felt there. So you're saying, there could have been an email, though it doesn't appear there was, saying just don't go. Like this is something that you don't attend.
Well, ironically, the email would have had to have gone from the office that actually itself then went to the event, because it's protocol that sends out the message to people saying, right, don't attend country X's events.
This go along to get along mentality, though, I guess, should it come as a surprise? Because I mean, again, it's so hard to reconcile with the public posture taken.
It does, but it kind of comes with the professional diplomatic sort of side of things. It's I guess what our francophone friends would call déformation professionnelle. You kind of are trained to see the other side and think that there's always value in dialogue. And generally speaking, that's true, except when you as a government are trying to make the point about isolation. And so you have to repress those sort of professional instincts and follow the policy.
So we just spoke with a Ukrainian MP who is here kind of making the case for more aid. And he said, a response from the Canadian government to this could be the lowering of diplomatic presence of Russian diplomatic staff, or the ambassador himself, expelling the ambassador himself. That would be a response that, I'm paraphrasing, but would be a sign of goodwill. What do you think about that?
Well, I think Canada's been one of the few countries that did not join the Western move to reducing Russian diplomatic presence. And so this might be a time to revisit that decision.
Do you think expelling the ambassador, I know that the government's concern is that the retaliation would be the Canadian ambassador is expelled from Russia. Is that a severe consequence at this point? Do you think that is something that they should consider beyond just lowering the number of staff, but actually specifically expelling the ambassador?
I think that's quite a high-end response. And so I would look at the overall establishment before going that route.
Okay. On the state of the war itself, and in particular, what's happening in Severodonetsk and the significance potentially of what ends up happening there for the rest of eastern Ukraine. Mm-hmm. Again, that MP was talking about, for example, wanting wanting some labs from Canada's stockpile, or just being in a position where they don't have the equipment necessary to push back Russian forces, and so Russian forces are encircling them there, and they're having to defend, trying to hold them off, basically, without being able to make advances themselves. What is your assessment of the state of help from Western countries like Canada?
We sort of blow hot and cold collectively, the Western countries. Initially, it was hands off. Who knows what's going to happen? Then it was, yes, we need to help Ukraine. It's doing way better than we thought. Then, this is getting kind of long, and maybe, they won't end up prevailing anyway. The problem is that got to provide the assistance in significant enough quantities that it makes a difference on the battlefield. Because it looks like it's being kind of, I think a German commentator described it as being doled out in homeopathic doses, saying, "Ooh, I see the Russians have advanced a bit, so we'll give you, 4 more of this or 3 more of that." Whereas, in fact, Ukraine needs dozens and hundreds of pieces of heavy equipment to stem the tide. And I think it does require a kind of can-do attitude on the part of people, including in the Canadian government, as opposed to going for the bureaucratic explanation of why something's really complicated and why there's a lot of paperwork for that retired piece of equipment and not sure it's really worth it.
Do you think something will happen to change that calculation? Like, do you think that what would?
Well, in theory, these regular meetings, and I think another one's coming up Wednesday at Ramstein on coordinating aid to Ukraine, should be part of that. But I think it requires, once again, I think some sort of galvanizing event, and often they're sad events, that refocus people on what's going on here. I think back a number of years, probably 4 or 5 years, when Canada's retired M113s were in discussion. People wondering, in fact, there were actually ministers wondering whether they could be sent to Ukraine, and it was saying, "Oh, no, they're too old, it's too complicated." Well, the Dutch ones are now being very eagerly welcomed in Ukraine. So it requires taking a new look at, are admittedly not huge stocks, but there is stuff there that could probably be very helpful in Ukraine right now, as opposed to people, doing feasibility studies.
Okay, Mr. Waschuk, I'll leave it there. Thanks for your time and insights as always.
You're very welcome.
Rustem Umerov is a Ukrainian MP. He's also a member of the Ukrainian delegation for peace talks with Russia. Hi, Mr. Umerov. Good to have you here.
Thank you.
I appreciate you carving some time out of your day, which I know is a very busy one, to come in. I have a number of questions for you about the state of the war itself, as well as food security. But I have to start on something here in Canada that's making a number of headlines, and that is the fact that a diplomat from Canada attended a Russia Day celebration with the Russian embassy. I'm wondering what your reaction to that is. The government has said it shouldn't have happened. They've apologized, but your reaction?
So thank you for the Minister of Foreign Affairs that they said it shouldn't be happen. At the moment, if Canada would focus on lowering down in a significant lowering down the diplomats, Russian diplomats in Canada, that would be a huge assistance. Why? Because we're in a state of war, and I think that would be a gesture that would help us.
Do you mean sort of expelling the Russian ambassador himself? Is that what you're saying?
It depends. It's Canadian relations. So, but at the moment, the world is significantly lowering the Russian diplomats outside in every country. So that could be a focus that would be big support to Ukraine. Why? Because they're using their influence everywhere, and not only attendance, but diplomatic support would be good things, good signal to our community, to our people.
In the past, when there have been calls for the Canadian government to do so, they have insisted that would essentially result in Russia doing the same to the Canadian ambassador and close down lines of communication with Russia. What would you say in response to that concern?
You have international organizations. If you are, do you have a good trade relations with them? We are in a state of war. We are defending not only Ukraine but Europe, and it's a global security. So, in case they will lower your diplomats, this is the consequences that that everybody should take. Why? Because we're talking about saving lives, and people are dying. There are 15 million people that are counted IDPs. There is a global food crisis. So lowering down the diplomats level is not that much a significant issue to discuss and take a decision.
On the state of the war itself, and in particular what's happening in Severodonetsk, we have heard from the president over the past week that should Severodonetsk fall, it could take the entire east with it. Is that your assessment, and where do things stand with the battle in that city?
I'll just explain that in Donetsk and Lugansk, those are two regions where we have a significant number of troops. What they're trying to do is encircle them and then bomb them. So, which means that will lead to 50,000 casualties from our side, 50,000 casualties from their side, which would be the huge place, the war in Europe at the moment happening. But that is why Severodonetsk is very important, because that's where they want to encircle us and they want to siege. You saw what they did to Mariupol. You saw what they did to 2,000 people that were under the Azovstal steel plant. So imagine that if they encircle 50,000 Ukrainian troops that are based there, our troops will not give up. So it will be a disaster and a genocide.
And where, I guess, how close to success is Russia in that sense? Like, it's hard to tell from over here because we do as much reading as we can, but it seems like they have made quite a few advances. I know that they destroyed a bridge, for example, that was an escape route. How close are they?
They're trying from different locations, from Kharkiv region, Lugansk, Donetsk, then siege Zaporizhia, Melitopol side. So they are encircling from everywhere. And if we would have enough weapons, for example, the MLRS systems, HIMARS, or the weapons that could push them back, that would have been a good defense for us. But at this stage, we are having our own casualties. We're trying to defend, and we're not giving up.
Could you use other weapons now? Like, who are you looking for the lethal aid from?
We have a lot of commitments from different countries, but like to have a commitment and to deliver to the field, it takes time. So, and when it takes time, you lose either people and your territories. It's not that we're fighting as much as we can, but with bare hands, we cannot defend. So that is why we are waiting from the Western allies to supply, including Canada. Canada does not produce a lot of lethal weapons, but nevertheless, there are howitzers, LAVs, APCs, like armored vehicles that Canada can supply.
So are you here asking for extra supply, extra aid from Canada that hasn't already been announced? And are you concerned at all about a delay in delivery?
No, we appreciate Canada's already support, humanitarian and military support that already been provided. And but at the moment in stocks, there are armored vehicles that Canada is not using. And those vehicles could be supplied to Ukraine to save lives. So we are running out of stocks everywhere, and these stocks are being now available in Canada, and Canada can supply those LAVs to Ukraine.
Have you had a response to that request?
We don't have any response. That's why we want to understand. That's why we met with the House of Commons, our colleagues, to understand how we can push forward this issue.
I also, just before I go, I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about something that you're involved in that is obviously significant to the whole world right now. That's around food security, the grain that is locked in Ukraine right now, the ports that Russia has blocked. What kind of negotiations are going on right now to try and change that situation?
I would like to just brief you on Ukraine has produced more than 100 million tons of crops. Out of 100 million, 60 million was exported. But at the moment, so it's 5 to 6 million a month that we were exporting from the ports. But unfortunately, at the moment, we can use all land territories, bordering territories, and we can only export up to 1 million. So we are 5 million in shortage. And this will affect 400 million worldwide. And some vulnerable states in Africa, Asia could get a famine. So we are fighting Russians, but at the same time, we are trying to solve these agri-food security issues because Russians are destroying the supply chain. And at this stage, the famine may be caused by not supply. Why? Because 60% of wheat from this region comes from Ukraine and Russia, and it has been supplied to vulnerable states. So basically, if we will not unblock these ports, we would face 400 million people and many million in casualties just because of this.
Okay, I have to leave it there. Mr. Umerov, thank you very much for coming in. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.